Well, here we are, start of another study, and currently in the third month of God's calendar. Now, in this month, in the middle of the month, I believe very well could be the last call for the harvest of the first fruits of Yahuwah and Yahushua. These first fruits are ones specifically mentioned in Revelation 14:4, 144,000 that were redeemed, purchased, and follow the Lamb wherever he may go. Remember, God's timing is perfect, and there's supposedly a time when at midnight there will be a cry made, and behold, the bridegroom will be coming, and we will be going out to meet him. Now, if we are considered to be first fruits of Yahuwah and Yahushua, wouldn't it make sense that we would be redeemed during a celebration of first fruits? And so with this thought in mind, wouldn't it be essential to know the correct timing of the Feast of Weeks, Feast of First Fruits? I believe this is the case, and that this is what this study is going to pursue. And so let's begin. Are others accurate in their interpretation of when the feast begins? I don't believe they are. Most believe the Feast of First Fruits either begins on the 16th or the 18th of the first month during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And here we have two different scriptures telling us two different things. For the Feast of Unleavened Bread, it says 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. For the Feast of First Fruits, it says, and ye shall eat neither bread nor parched corn, so on and so forth. Leviticus 23:6, one, and Leviticus 23:14, the other. Two different instructions. So as you can tell, this would be a complete contradiction, these two instructions. And the Feast of Unleavened Bread goes from the 15th day of the first month to through the 21st day of the first month. So either the 16th or the 18th of the first month would fall within this time period and would be a complete contradiction to have that celebrated at that time. Thus, the Feast of First Fruits weeks has to be a celebration separate from and after the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So we're looking for a time period of after the 21st day of the first month that would fit into the instructions given in Leviticus 23:15 through 16. Shall count it to you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Sabbaths shall be complete, even until the morrow after the 7th Sabbath. You shall number 50 days. Better yet, just so happens that the Dead Sea Scrolls gives a couple different fragments of it that specifically tell us what date to start it on. And the fragment 4Q325 dealing with the priestly courses, fragment 1 tells us the 25th, the Sabbath falls to Jedediah. Also, during that course's duties falls the festival of the barley on the 26th. So that means that the first day of the Feast of First Fruits is on the 26th day. So once again in this calendrical document 4Q326 of the Dead Sea Scrolls, we see the 26th day of the first month mentioned for the first day of the Feast of First Fruits. As it says on the 25th day in it, the Sabbath, on the 26th day in it, Feast of the Grain after the Sabbath in the first month, which has 30 days. So now that we know the start date, we can now count the Omer of 50 days and get an end date. Just remember, though, that Yahushua still is considered the first fruit of those who had ascended to his Father. In John 20:17, he hadn't ascended yet to his Father. But in John 20:26 through 27, he tells Thomas that he can touch him, meaning that at this time he had ascended to his Father. Okay, again, following God's calendar, we go 5 days left in the first month, 26 through the 30th, plus all 30 days in the second month, plus 15 days in the third month, equal a total of 50 days to the 15th day in the third month, ending the Feast of First Fruits. And it just so happens that there's many historical happenings of the past that fall on the 15th day of the third month, and are really nice correlations if we were to be called home at that time. Now, although the dream of Abram, as I explained in my study called Wise vs. Unwise, that informed him, "Fear not, Abram, I am your defender, and your reward will be very great. Look towards heaven and number the stars, if you are able to number them, and so shall your offspring be." This seemed to happen on the first day of the third month, but apparently only the dream had happened then. So instead, the actual covenant that was made when Abram made sacrifice to Yahuwah happened in the middle of the month, as Jubilees 14:1 and 4 through 5 says. And he took all these in the middle of the month, and he dwelt in the oak of Mamre, which is near Hebron. He built an altar there and sacrificed all these. And when the sun had set, a flame of fire passed between the pieces. And on that day, Yah made a covenant with Abram, saying, "To your offspring will I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates." And on that day, we made a covenant with Abram in the same way we had covenanted with Noah this month. And Abram renewed the festival and the laws for himself forever. Jubilees 14:10 through 11, 13, 17, 18, and 20. So if we check this out in regards to the covenant made with Noah, this was a two-part covenant of agreeing first not to eat blood, and secondly, that the earth would never again be destroyed by a flood. Thus, the rainbow as a constant reminder. And we find out that the covenant was to be celebrated and renewed as the Feast of Weeks in this month once a year, to renew the covenant every year. Jubilee 6:17. Now, the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of First Fruits, this feast is twofold, of a double nature. Notice it doesn't say threefold for the Feast of Unleavened Bread again. And you should celebrate it in its season, one day in the year, in this month, the same day every year. Jubilees 6:20 through 21. And in Jubilees 6:18 through 19, we're told that both Noah and Abraham observed this feast. As it says, Noah and his sons observed for 7 Jubilees and 1 week of years until the day of Noah's death. And Abraham observed it, and Isaac and Jacob and his children observed it up to your days, meaning Moses. And sure enough, it tells us in Jubilees 1:1, it did happen with Moses that in the first year of the Exodus of the children of Israel out of Egypt, in the third month, on the 16th day of the month, that Yahuwah spoke to Moses saying, "Come up to me on the mountain." And so that was just after Moses must have celebrated that feast. So prior to the 15th day of the third month in the Feast of First Fruits, we're told that in Exodus 19:19 that Yahuwah actually told Moses and the children of Israel that about celebrating the Feast harvest, feast of first fruits of their labors. That was told to them as mentioned in Exodus 23:16. And yet it gets even better. This day in history, even more happened. Jubilees 15:21 and 24 says, "But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you this time next year. On that same day was Abraham circumcised, and all the men of his house, and all those whom he had bought with money from the children of the stranger were circumcised with him." In Genesis 17:14 reiterates this covenant, "And the uncircumcised man child whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant." And Jubilees 16:13 tells us that on this date that she gave birth to a son in the 3rd month, in the middle of the month, at the time in which Yahuwah had spoken to Abraham on the festival of first fruits of the harvest. Isaac was born. And because of this next happening, we will shortly be able to say, "Behold the Lion, the tribe of Judah." As Jubilees 28:15 says, "Again Jacob went into her, and she conceived and gave birth to a 4th son. He called his name Judah on the 15th of the 3rd month in the 1st year of the 4th week." Judah was born. And so the ending of the 15th day of the 3rd month of the Feast of First Fruits, Feast of Weeks, matches on our Gregorian calendar this year to June 4th, 2019. Please let it be the day that we will be called home and be considered as their first fruits.